The Byzantine and Sassanid empires fought each other in many conflicts through the centuries, but none of them was as bloody and fruitless as the War of 602 to 628. This conflict weakened and exposed both empires. Meanwhile, to the south, the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, had united most of Arabia by 630. His successor, Caliph Abu Bakr, faced a massive rebellion against his rule. This conflict, later known as the Ridda Wars, continued until February of 633. With the peninsula back under his control, Abu Bakr started thinking about expansion. In March of 633, he sent his best general, Khalid ibn al-Walid, to attack the Sassanid Empire. In April, al-Walid and his 18,000 troops entered modern-day Kuwait. The local governor, Hormozd, had 20,000 men under his command and moved to intercept al-Walid near Kazima. But the Arab army was more mobile, and al-Walid was able to outflank the Sassanids to move on Hufeir. That forced Hormozd to march towards Hufeir to defend it, but al-Walid again moved quicker, now threatening Kazima again. The Sassanids had to move back. All this marching tired the forces of Hormozd, and they eventually had to fight exhausted in the engagement that would later be known as the Battle of Chains. The battle began with a duel between the generals, in which Hormozd was killed. The Sassanid footmen in the centre had been chained to each other to allow them to hold the line, while cavalry waited on the flanks. The death of their general affected morale, but they managed to repel the initial Muslim attack. Still, the Sassanids were exhausted from marching, and eventually their cavalry started to give ground and had to retreat. This turned into a general retreat, but with the centre slowed by the chains, most of the Sassanid infantry was killed. However, a bigger Sassanid army under Karin was en route. Karin crossed the Tigris in late April and set up his camp near the river. The remainder of Hormozd's troops joined him as well. Al-Walid was moving to the north to cross the river, but had to stop, as his 17,000 were now facing 40,000 foes. Once again, the armies formed up with infantry in the centre and cavalry on the flanks, and once again the battle started with duels, during which Karin and 2 of his generals were killed. Al-Walid led a frontal attack, and the leaderless Sassanids were slaughtered. The Muslim troops killed around 20,000 enemies. The Sassanid court learned about the losses by the end of April and gathered 2 more armies. The first army, led by عنزة, was sent to the city of Walaja to intercept the Muslims, as it was expected that al-Walid would move to the west along the Euphrates. Indeed, al-Walid's army was marching as predicted. He had a number of spies in the area and knew that the second Sassanid army under Bahman would soon reinforce عنزة, so he decided to attack the first Sassanid force. The 2 armies met in early May near Walaja in a field between 2 hills. Al-Walid had 10,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry against 30,000 Sassanid troops. Initially, عنزة was planning to wait for Bahman, so he didn't attack the Muslims on the first day. Al-Walid needed to lure his enemy out, so during the night he sent his cavalry away. The Sassanid leader fell right into the trap. He ordered his troops to attack head-on, and the Muslim army started retreating under pressure towards the hill behind it. Al-Walid's centre allowed itself to be pushed back, and his army formed a crescent. عنزة concluded that it was a great moment to move all of his cavalry against the flanks of the enemy and encircle the Muslims. That was the moment Al-Walid's cavalry was waiting for. It was hidden behind the opposite hill and charged into the enemy at a crucial moment. The forces of عنزة were now encircled. In a battle eerily reminiscent of the classical battle at Cannae, the Sassanids lost more than 20,000 warriors. Al-Walid continued moving to the west. 6 more Sassanid armies were sent against him between May and November of 633, but each of these armies was defeated. However, movement into the central part of the Sassanid Empire was still impossible, and a letter from the Caliph ordered Al-Walid to move into Syria instead. He won another battle against the allied Sassanid Byzantine army near Firaz in late 633 and moved on to fight the Romans.